time for another Japanese history lesson. This week we're gonna go as far back as we can go with Japan's prehistoric period, otherwise known as the Jomon period. The Jomon period is said to be roughly around 14,500 BC and 250 BC, but we're gonna have to start a little earlier than that. It's said that Japan might have been inhabited from as early as 50,000 BC thanks to many excavations. And the first people there were the hunter-gatherer type that arrived via land bridges that connected Japan, Korea, and China until about 20,000 BC when the ocean swelled and created more of an island. And it was around 10,000 BC that the inhabitants mastered what the Jomon period is most famous for, clay pots. The Jomon period actually gets its name from the clay pot. Jomon means cord marked. All of the pots from the Jomon period were decorated with cords, making these really unique and beautiful styles. What's even more awesome about Jomon pottery is that it is the oldest pottery in the world that can be assigned a definite date. The oldest known Jomon pot is 18,000 years old. 18,000! The pots are supposedly used for cooking, for storing food and water, and for burial purposes. Along with the pots, they made stylized clay figures known as dogu, which were used for healing and birth. They also made many more things during the Jomon period, such as wicker baskets, robes made from the bark of mulberry trees, and jewelry made from bones and shells because most communities were on the shoreline. When most people think of the prehistoric period, they think of people living in caves, but that was a rare occurrence for the people in the Jomon period, as most of them lived in open space in temporary shelters and only used caves while traveling. The largest known settlement of the Jomon period is located in Sannai Maruyama in Aomori Prefecture, and it's possibly held about 500 inhabitants at its peak, and that's a lot for a prehistoric culture. Usually settlements had groups of 20 to 150 people made up of extended families that helped in the child rearing because most parents died in their 30s. The settlements were semi-permanent with about a dozen dwellings in the base camp area, and those dwellings were pit houses with thatched roofs that went all the way down to the ground. The most common weapon at the time was of course the bow and arrow for hunting, but dogs were also used and were the only domesticated animals. Yay for puppies! There was even trade between the highland and coastal region, exchanging obsidian and salt. It's said there was also farming in the Jomon period, and the oldest known farming location is in Bibi, Hokkaido, but that is unconfirmed information at the moment. Rice was actually introduced at the end of the Jomon period along with millet and barley. Prior to rice being the staple of the Japanese diet, in the Jomon period they grew mostly beefsteak herb and barnyard grass. While the Jomon period is most famous for its pottery, around 5000 BC they began to produce hemp cloth, and 4000 BC the famous Japanese lacquerware came into production. As for the language, it's said that Japanese was a close relative of Korean, but also Mongolian and Turkish. Shinto and Buddhism was a long way away from the people of the Jomon period, but it's said that they were snake worshippers. Some discoveries and excavations have uncovered relics of snakes surrounded by stone circles. I don't know about you, but snake worship seems pretty bamf to me. Now, one of the most fascinating parts of Jomon culture is that the descendants of these ancestors are known as the Ainu, the original Japanese people, but there's lots of controversy to that topic. The Ainu now are mostly confined to Hokkaido, and there are about 10,000 descendants of the Ainu still living today. You could compare the treatment of the Ainu to that of the Native Americans here, but there's a lot of differences. For example, the Ainu weren't recognized as the indigenous Japanese people until 1997, and up till then they were marginalized and ignored. I could go on for a long time explaining the controversies and struggles of the Ainu people, but then this video would probably never end. For now, that's basically all you need to know about the Jomon period. If you have further questions, leave them in the comments below or on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter, and I will see you next time, cuties. Bye! During the Jomon period, they also made whisker baskets. I'm sorry, am I annoying you? Now, one of the most fascinating, I can't say the word fascinating.